This is a presentation of Northeast Streaming Sports.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Monday Morning Mac and Jack Show on National Streaming Sports. I am the Philly sports guy filling in for Mac, who is still a little laid up. And of course, we have Hall of Fame boxing writer Jack Hirsch with us. Good morning, Jack. How are you?
Hey, good morning, Pax. I mean, I didn't realize you were such a morning person, seeming so lively and so on. My impression was that you were a night owl, but I'm wrong again.
I burn the candle at both ends, so
Mhm.
it's like I know that it's going to burn out pretty quick, but that's just part of life. I figure I'll sleep when I'm dead. But in the meantime, we're still. I'm going to be filling in for Mac this week. Hopefully, he will be getting better very soon, and he will be back on the show as quickly as possible. We know we're all wishing
Your
him the best.
timing is off, Pax. Your timing is off. Normally, you'd make a remark, I'm going to sleep while I'm dead the way the Jets are. You take the opportunity to give me a
Well, you
little
know
bit
what?
of a
I
bit.
didn't want to rub it in so quick, but we might as well start right there since you probably have the most to talk about that. The Indianapolis Colts go into MetLife Stadium and they upset the Aaron Rodgers of
Yeah, I mean it's not all on Aaron Rodgers. Look, the Jets are 3-8. They're done. Don't misunderstand me. But there are 6 games left in the season. Forget the playoffs. I'm not talking about that. The games always mean something because you're auditioning for next year. You're auditioning. Let's see the character of the players. Are they going to play hard over the last 6 games? I thought the Jets did play hard yesterday, unlike the Arizona game the week before. That was an absolute disgrace. They did show up, but they're dysfunctional. The first 6 possessions, they don't even get a first down. And then they finally get a first down. The fans start cheering, the Bronx cheer, like finally. And then they come to life. Brees Hall was great yesterday. He'd been struggling a little this year, but he was really, really good. Aaron Rodgers started making some plays. And I know it's a cliche. We always hear about a team with a losing record. Well, they could easily be so and so. In the Jets case, it could. We keep hearing about Aaron Rodgers, and he hasn't been good this year. Don't get me wrong. I'm not defending him. But there have been a number of games where their defense couldn't close the game out. The Jets touted defense, where the other team took the ball down the field and scored on them after the Jets had grabbed a lead late in the game. Between that and special teams, the 3-8 record could easily be, a 6-5, 7-4, but it's 3-8, and I guess what Bill Parcells says, what your record says it is. No, we hear about all the things that went wrong with the Jets yesterday, but mismanagement of the timeouts that disgusted me the most. Pags, they burned up their 3 second half timeouts unnecessarily. Once Aaron Rodgers didn't like the formation in the third quarter, so he calls a timeout. Don't call it darn timeout. Those timeouts are like gold. They're like gold. You do not call a timeout. I would sooner take a 5-yard penalty. The second time they call a timeout is they're trying to draw, okay, the, the Colts offside when they know they're going to attempt a field goal. You can do that once in a while. You could snook another team. We saw it happen with the Steelers and Commanders, but it's so rare that you're going to do it. And they burn a timeout. And then the third time, the Colts have the ball on the Jet 10-yard line with a minute and a half left. And the Jets use their third and final timeout. I mean, come on. I mean, it's. I understand. Well, you want to stop the clock in case they score. You want to leave some time, but the Colts could still run the clock down if Anthony Richardson didn't score on a 10-yard run. They could have run it down to the end. So the Jets get the ball back with 46 seconds left on their own 30, and there are no timeouts. I understand there's still time to get into field goal range. You're down 1 point. I get all that. But the point is, without the timeouts, you get sacked. All of a sudden, it's panic. You can't stop the clock. You can't regroup. It's all a rush at that point. You hit someone on the 6, 7 yard pass. You got to rush to the line of scrimmage, and it was a fiasco the way the Jets lost the game. But I'm going to put it on the touted defense in large part. Once again, just like against the New England Patriots, Jets grab a lead late in the game, and the other team takes the ball and marches it down the field.
Yeah, it there's a lot that's going on up in New York right now. It's not just the Jets, both the Giants too. But staying with the Jets, I mean, obviously you follow them much more than I do, and we spoke offline that Joe Douglas, is made a lot of moves, and he's made a lot of the right moves. He's put these players, like these are good players that are on the team that are not being coached right, I guess. What do you think is going to be the biggest changes now? Is Joe Douglas gone now because of this, and is Aaron Rodgers also gone now because of this?
The Jets are going to have to draft a quarterback next year if there's one viable to draft. Maybe a Quinn Ewers is going to fall towards the middle of the first round because we don't know what the draft position is going to be. There are actually teams behind the Jets if the draft took place today. So it would be hard to get a Shador Sanders or someone like that. And you don't pay big money to a quarterback just for the sake of it. And none of the quarterbacks in the free agent market are worth that investment. They're not going to have a reunion with Sam Darnold. I mean, that's kind of risky to do something like that. So you probably draft a quarterback if you think there's one that could be a franchise quarterback in the future, perhaps like a Quinn Ewers, and then you run it back with Aaron Rodgers, or you have to live with Aaron Rodgers, or maybe just change the culture completely. Get the best backup quarterback available. Like, I'm just throwing a name out at you, Pags. Don't laugh. Like a Jameis Winston, for example, and just give him the darn job. At least you're changing the culture in the building because this is Aaron Rodgers' team still. They got all the pieces around him. And again, I can't see anything different that Joe Douglas could have done in the draft and trades. He got Devontae Adams. Good pickup. I don't want to hear, well, he's past his peak. He's still pretty darn good. And you combine him with Garrett Wilson. You have two elite wide receivers. Tyler Conklin's a decent tight end there. They address the offensive line. I mean, I just don't see what else. You know what it is, Pax. You can relate to this with the Eagles. Sometimes it's a question of not the personnel moves. It's a question of players just have to play better. That's all there is to it. They just have to play better.
Well, and right now the Jets would have the seventh pick in the draft. Now that may change tonight if the Cowboys were to lose. They would wind up with the eighth pick. If the Cowboys win tonight, then they still would wind up with the seventh. But they also have not had their bye week either. So there's the teams behind them. There are a number of 2-8 teams behind them. The only team that's really guaranteed the number one spot at this moment is Jacksonville, who is just a hot mess in general. As they played the number one team in the NFL right now.
But you tell me this, okay? We keep hearing about coaches on the hot seat, like coaching changes make a difference. You're obviously very familiar with Doug Peterson, Super Bowl winning coach for the Philadelphia Eagles. And when he was a Super Bowl winning coach, he was more than just along for the ride. You have to give him a lot of credit for how he coached that team. And now he's with Jacksonville. And how do you go from one of the better coaches to one of the worst coaches? He's had no positive effects. He was supposed to be a quarterback guru, having been a backup quarterback to Brett Favre himself. And Trevor Lawrence hasn't made any improvement. If anything, he's regressed. I know he was hurt yesterday, but sometimes you kind of wonder. You can only make so many moves, Pags. I mean, there's only so much you can do. And finally, you have to just see everyone in the room and tell them you got to play better. It's on you. We can't do anything else to help you out anymore.
I agree. And the truth of the matter is that the Eagles, when they went on that Super Bowl run with Doug Peterson as coach, they had a number of things that were already in place that helped them. And there was this air about them that they were a much better team than what was provided for them over the last over 2 years. They had the problem with uh, the coach right before them, Chip Kelly, and then you bring in Doug Peterson, who was supposedly the dumbest coach in the NFL. And I think that that had more to do with, interestingly enough, Joe Douglas and Howie, that actually put the good team around them. And it was the right team for the right job, that their culture spoke more than the coaching is what I think, because everybody keeps dismissing the fact that during that Super Bowl run, and I it's almost funny now because, like I said, I'm not a religious guy, but the Eagles uh, were a very religious team, and there were guys on a weekly basis getting baptized at the facility into the religion that both Nick Foles and Carson Wentz and uh, uh, the offensive coordinator at the time all were. They were all Baptist and they were all baptizing players. Again, it's more of when you got everybody on the same page, you could move mountains, and that's what
Yeah, but
happened.
that could sometimes be dissension on a team with religious differences. I don't want to fully get into that because some guys might not want to be involved with that and they might be pressured a little bit. So you never know how that's really
Right.
going to pan out. But it's funny, you mentioned the name Carson Wentz. You talk about a forgotten backup quarterback. He's the backup quarterback at Kansas City to Patrick Mahomes. That's about the most cushiony backup job in the NFL because you collect a paycheck. You have a chance of going to the Super Bowl, of course. And I don't know whether Carson Wentz can have a reset and maybe be a starter again. Because if he could get back to what he was when he first got in the league, and it's a gigantic if I see about to chuckle now, that would be a steal for some team. Because seeing Geno Smith yesterday, and I think that's a bit of an aberration. Geno Smith came into the league to the Jets as a starter, and he was okay. They ran it back with him a second year, and then he was basically a career backup. And he kicked around the league for a while, and then he gets to Seattle, and he revives his career. He reaches his potential, and he's been a good, NFL starter for Seattle, for a while since Russell Wilson left a couple of years ago. But I think that's more of an aberration. But there might be another guy or two out there who might still have something in the tank. And you wonder about a Carson Wentz a little bit because he's already proven he can do it at a high NFL level. That's the point. And something along the way, he just lost it. It may have had to do with his character, his focus, his dedication. But maybe he's matured. Maybe this year under Andy Reid with KC, has gotten him back to where he is, where he once was, I should say.
Maybe, maybe. I don't know that if you are a franchise like the Jets, that you want to take a flyer on something like that. I just because there's already too much that has been bad against him. That how would you want to resolve an issue by possibly bringing in another issue? So
Yeah,
that's kind of how I
no,
look at
I'm
it.
not suggesting that. That would be insane. The way a Carson Wentz proves that he could start again is if he gets in for some reason as a backup because there's an injury and plays really, really well. I mean, you don't take a chance, on someone like that. There are a lot of former starters in this league, like Tyrod Taylor, Andy Dalton, Jameis Winston. There's a reason that they're backups now. They didn't become backups overnight. I mean, they were viable starters back in the day. Joe Flacco's another one, but obviously they lost something off their fastball. And to stay in the league, it really has to be as a backup. And they look for the opportunity when they can. If a young quarterback ahead of them falters, if someone gets injured, then they're given an opportunity to do something.
Well, and in the process of that, Anthony Richardson, as we're talking about quarterbacks that have had a little bit of an issue, Anthony Richardson is now, I think, as of right this second, they are in the number 8 spot. So they're just on the outside looking in for
Colts
the
at
playoff.
5-6.
Yeah,
Yeah,
5 and
yeah.
6.
Anthony Richardson, he looked good yesterday, all in all, because he's a great athlete. He can run with the ball. And once Anthony Richardson starts running with the ball, he's a tough guy to tackle. You don't want to take him head on. He's a big guy. So
Yeah.
you can't let him gain momentum once he starts running. Because, once in a while you get a quarterback who's big and strong, and you don't want to take him head on. A Patrick Mahomes you could take head on. He's not like a big, strong guy when he starts running. But in Anthony Richardson, you don't want him to kind of build that momentum. He made some bad throws yesterday, Anthony Richardson, too, but he also hit some big plays. He played well, all in all. He took advantage of a couple of breakdowns in the Jets secondary.
Agreed. So we go from one of the worst teams in the league with the Jets to one of the best teams in the league playing against one of the other worst teams in the league. Uh, the Lions look unstoppable. This is their 4th week of in their first 10. Obviously, they're 9-1 right now, but it's their 4th week over 40 points. This is their second 52 spot that they put on a team. And first off, the Jaguars stink. So let's be for real. But uh, is there a thought maybe that Detroit could be peaking a little early?
I don't think so. I think it comes down to the rest of the league and the NFC. Which teams have to pick their game up a little bit? The Eagles are playing well right now, and Philadelphia should only hope that they're like just one seed behind the Lions. So come playoff time, you hope the Lions get bumped the game before you play them, assuming the Eagles could keep advancing and that the Eagles could host the NFC Championship game. But no one would expect that to happen, that the Lions would lose their first playoff game, meaning the Eagles would have to go into Detroit for the NFC Championship game. Wow, wow, wow. That's a monster chore, to be quite honest with the Detroit fans. They are so hungry for title. Now, you're probably going to get a little mad at me with this, Pax. You're going to be very defensive. No one defends the Philadelphia fan base as much as you do. That's why you call the Philly sports guy. But I'm talking about all the franchises in the NFL. There's no franchise at this moment who needs to get to the Super Bowl more than the Lions fan base. They absolutely have to. The Eagles won a Super Bowl not long ago, and they should have won a second Super Bowl, but that's another story that got away. But at least they were there. The Lions have never been to a Super Bowl before. And considering how ugly they blew the lead last year against the 49ers and didn't get to the Super Bowl, how heartbreaking that was, this is it now. They got to win the Super Bowl. Their fan base is insane about it. Insane. The Eagle fan base badly wants to win a Super Bowl. Don't get me wrong. I understand that. And I'm not saying the Lion fans are better than the Eagle fans. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying the Lions have to get it done this year. They're never going to have as good an opportunity, as powerful a team again as they're going to have this year. And no franchise in sports needs a championship as bad as the Lions. I mean, none I can see. I mean, and going into Detroit, where they could just smell it. They're on the verge of it. You know, they can be beat still, the Lions there. Don't get me wrong. They could still be beat, but if they're playing the Eagles hypothetically, Jalen Hurts will have to play a mistake-free game. He's going to have to take off on some run scamper. Saquon Barkley's going to have to be Saquon. He's going to be great. You know, A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith. But most importantly, the Eagle defense is really going to have to show up and make life miserable for,
for Jared Goff.
Detroit. And
Yeah,
for
and
Goff.
I'll be honest, we have a ways to go before we get there. I know that
And
I
we have a
mentioned in
ways
the
to go,
beginning
but
of
I
the
could see it
season that that's
trending
going to
that way.
occur, and that's going to occur. And my thought is that, and that's why I said I couldn't tell you what happens after that game, because truth of the matter is that I see Detroit, as of right this second, I see Detroit winning that game. However, what I do also see is the possibility of their coach overcoaching at the most critical time. And that's a possibility too. So I won't talk about that just yet. I want to save that for when we
Too
get
early,
to
but
the
you called
playoffs.
it, and I could just visualize that right now. It's the NFC Championship game, but don't count out the Packers. I know at this moment there's no way they would beat the Detroit Lions. I understand that, but the Packers have upside. They could start peaking late in the year. Remember, they did beat the Lions, upset them on Thanksgiving Day last year. And the Packers, with a little luck, they could have gone to the Super Bowl themselves last year. They beat the Cowboys in Dallas, shocking upset in the playoffs last year. And it took the 49ers the final drive of the game to beat the Packers last year. So there was little difference between the Packers and Niners, and there was no real difference between the Niners and Chiefs in the Super Bowl. So let's hold off. But right now, the Lions are the team to beat. We both agree on that.
Right. And like I said, I thought that the Lions lost last year, that NFC Championship game, because he overcoached.
Dan Campbell. Well,
Yeah. So we'll have to see
yeah.
that when we get closer. But right now they look unstoppable. Like I said, that's their second time they put up a 52 spot. The fourth game where they've hit over 40 points. I kind of feel that they are going to be the team to beat right now in the NFC, with the Eagles being number two. But the other side, I mean, there were two monster games in the AFC, and we'll start with the 1 o'clock game, the Baltimore Ravens versus the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think that game was everything it was meant to be. Obviously, it was a very close game. The Steelers couldn't put it in the end zone, but they didn't need to. They had a kicker who could actually kick some field goals, and the Ravens, Tucker must have been all tuckered out from last night or something, or the night before, because he missed a couple. And that proved to be the difference in this game. I mean, it was 18-16. The Steelers wind up winning it all on 6 field goals. But it was every bit the knockdown, drag out fight that everybody expected it to be.
Yeah, it was an intriguing game. And at the end of the game, when you saw Justin Fields had a chance to kind of ice it, they put him in a package play to run with the ball. He hits the ground 1 yard short of a first down. He didn't have the wherewithal, I guess, at that moment. But I think the Steelers, I don't want to say they're in Lamar Jackson's head. He just can't get over the top against the Steelers. And that was a big game because there's a good chance now that the Ravens finish behind the Steelers, in the standings there, meaning the Ravens would be a wild card team. They'd have to play 3 games instead of any chance of playing 2. And they would have to, play certain games on the road. Maybe they'll host one playoff game to start. We'll see what the seeding is, what it is at the time. But that makes it much harder to get to the Super Bowl. And the Ravens have the personnel. They have the pieces. I know there are problems in their secondary that the Steelers couldn't really take advantage of. And I'm not overly impressed with the Steelers. They have an outstanding defense. I just don't see that offense, carrying them through. Najee Harris, real good running back. I know they have, with, Pickens and picking up Mike Williams from the Jets. They could have a bit of a passing game, but Russell Wilson doesn't put a lot of fear into you, throwing the ball. But look, he's experienced. He knows how to manage the game. He can play to the game that Mike Tomlin sets up. And you got to give Mike Tomlin credit, because when the Steelers were winning earlier this year, Pax, with Justin Fields, people were upset. Oh, how can you go to Russell Wilson? Russell Wilson's a little bit the better choice. A little bit the better choice. It doesn't mean Justin Fields can't be a starting quarterback in the league at some point. That remains to be seen. But when a guy has had 3 years with a team the way Justin Fields has had with the Bears, and he doesn't fully secure the position, don't start complaining that you want him, that he's your guy, that he's your savior.
Well, not to mention this, maybe we'll talk about this more tomorrow, but could you see possibly Justin Fields in Jet Green?
Not as a full-time start. I just can't. I can't do it. He's possibly an NFL caliber starter. The question is, with the Jets, the atmosphere with Aaron Rodgers, do you want to change the culture? You have to completely change the culture of the team when you move on from Aaron Rodgers. Let me ask you this question, Pax. This is a great question. Of all the NFL players, who has the biggest personality? Most influential, biggest personality, that they're influential, where the coaches might be a little apprehensive to take them on. The GM might be apprehensive to take them on.
Well, I think of two people specifically, Travis Kelce and Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers is a big personality that, there's already been rumblings from the gate that he was too much for the Jets even. And the fact that he has controlled the franchise, he got the coach fired. He's had his
No, I don't know if he got the coach fired. I think he takes a little bit of a bum rap. I thought he got along with Robert Salah all in all. Rodgers has always had an edgy relationship, with every coach, from Mike McCarthy to Matt LaFleur. You're walking on eggshells sometimes dealing with Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, no, and I get that, and I think that there's going to be if I was the Jets organization, and I know that the problem is that you've got what was he, the owner of Johnson and Johnson, owning that team? Johnson and Johnson owns that team or something like that. And you think about that alone, that Johnson and Johnson even broke up. You know what I mean? So you already got that type of thought process in the mix. I don't know that the Jets, if I was the Jets ownership, I would almost, listen, I'm going to put a veil in front of me of everybody else, and I am going to clean house, sweep everybody out, and start fresh again. And whether you keep Rodgers or not, that's going to be the decision of a new general manager and somebody who's going to bring in his own coach and things like that, and try to just move on 100% and see if you could get something different. That's what happened with Detroit. Detroit was able to get beyond all of the losing, bring somebody in who has some gumption. You know what I mean? He just had the energy, and ultimately that energy took hold. That's what I would have to do here if I'm the Jets.
Well, I'm going to tell you, the Jets are going to be hiring a new coach. That really has to be more the storyline, and who's going to quarterback next year. And two candidates stand out. Aaron Glenn, the job he's doing with the Lions, it's finally due for head coaching position. But the guy I like the most, but I might not hire him because of the baggage, is Brian Flores, the defensive coordinator, of the Vikings, who, was the Dolphin head coach and had success as the Dolphin head coach. And Flores is a New York guy. It would be kind of like a dream job to be back in his city in New York. And that defense that hasn't quite played up to expectations, I think he would have tightened it up. And if he was coaching this year, I think it would be at least a couple of extra wins. You might say big deal. They'd be 5-6 instead of 3-8, and that'd be still a little hope of maybe getting a playoff position. But it's what is Nick Sirianni. His hot seat, is it lukewarm now? One more. If Nick Sirianni, if the Eagles lose their next game and Nick Sirianni's moves get questioned, is he on the hot seat? Or what's the deal? If the Eagles go to the playoffs, they are going to go to the playoffs. It's pretty safe to say, even though nothing's certain. And let's say they lose the first game. Is Nick Sirianni gone? I mean, I don't know Howie Roseman's relationship with him, but Jeff Lurie is going to make the final call on that. If Jeff Lurie wants Nick Sirianni gone, Howie Roseman won't be able to save him.
So I had spoken to somebody about the game that we're talking about that was in question, where the coaching made up the biggest of the deals with that. And I was told by somebody who's much closer to the game than I am, is that the reason why there were some questionable coaching calls during that Jacksonville game is that they were protecting Doug Peterson. That they did not want to run it up on Doug to be able to and get him fired. That they thought that if that, and that sounded funny to me too when I heard it. And I asked him, like, is that a real thing? Is that a real thing we're talking about? This is the NFL. Is that for real that they were protecting Doug Peterson not to have him fired after that game? And he's saying,
Wasn't that a close game? Wait, that was a close game, the Eagles and the
it was
Jags.
a close game, but it was a
Too
close
close
game
for comfort.
because of bad coaching calls. Because of bad coaching calls by Nick Sirianni trying to go for it for
I
two.
find that hard to believe he would pull back with the game still conceivably on the line.
He didn't pull back. He was over aggressive, and in those over aggressive moments didn't make it. So that's that. There was a difference of a thought process there. I can't speak. I can't speak for it 100%. I can only go by what this ex NFL player was telling me, and he says it happens much more frequently in the NFL than is ever spoken about. When you see a team that's so much better and they have questionable calls and weirdo things happening in that game, that sometimes it's done for the benefit of the opposing coach. And I was like, okay, I'll chalk that up because he hasn't had the same problems. He's definitely this game specifically, this past game specifically for the Eagles. He tried to get the zero off the board. Now his kicker wasn't doing well, but he tried to get the zero off the board as early as possible. He didn't go for it on some of the fourth downs that he would normally go for it on. So I have to say that at the moment, I believe that he's learning from his mistakes. If they were to lose in the first round in the playoffs, it depends on how they lose. I can't see that
Is
happening.
Howie Roseman close with Nick Sirianni? Is that his guy? Because I know.
That is his guy. So it's
Because with the Giants, for example, people are saying, "Oh, Brian DeBall is going to be gone." They don't realize Joe Shine, the Giant GM, and Brian DeBall are extremely close. So Joe Shine is not going to want to fire Brian DeBall as the head coach. He's going to want him back next year. And the only way Brian DeBall gets fired if the Mara, the Giant owner, steps in and says, no, we have to make a coaching change. He tells the GM if he allows Joe Shine to stay.
I don't think Joe Shine can stay. After that whole Barkley situation, you have to get him out. Like I don't know that he's a bad enough GM for that reason. However, I do believe that he's got to go. Like, you can't keep him. And that means probably Brian DeBall is going. Truth of the matter is, if you put Brian DeBall coaching the Jets right now, I'd be willing to bet that the Jets are more closer to 500.
Well, I don't know about that. You mentioned that whole Barkley situation, and I've talked with Mac about this a number of times. Occasionally, you could maybe relate to this with certain Eagle players. You get a player who's a legacy player who should be with the team his whole career if possible to try to work it out, as long as he can perform on the field, and Barkley certainly can. Barkley was that rare legacy player for the Giants who you wanted him to be a career Giant. You didn't want him to go anywhere else. Maybe at the tail end of his career for 1 year, they all maybe go somewhere else for one season, but people basically forget that one season, but not in the prime of his career. Let's say Barkley plays 5, 6 more years, which is a possibility. Okay, it's a possibility. And let's say he could perform on a high level for five more years. Chances are he's gone to the Hall of Fame. And now you're split down the middle. Is he going as a Giant or an Eagle? And you want to know something? I think he'd go as an Eagle if he played
Oh, no, yeah.
6 years for the
100%.
Eagles. And how are you going to feel if you're a Giant fan, a Giant organization? This is our guy. He should be going in as a Giant. And Joe Shine had no attachment, and his arrogance. Oh, we don't have to pay for guys to take handoffs. He mentioned with Barkley, like his main thing. Oh, he could just grab a handoff, not seeing all the things, the way he catches passes out of the backfield, the way he could block, the way he could act as a decoy, the way he loosens up defenses for the wide receivers, and just the arrogance in him, the way he handled it. And running backs are so underpaid. I would get disgusted if I'm a Saquon Barkley. They talk about his great contract, 26 million guaranteed out of the 37.5 million. You mean to tell me, Pags, that CD Lamb is making more money in 1 year than Barkley's getting for 3? And you mean to tell me that CD Lamb is more valuable to the Cowboys than Barkley is to the Eagles? They're both, CD Lamb's valuable, don't get me wrong, but no. Saquon Barkley's he's arguably the most
the
valuable
offensive player of the year. He's and in the conversation for MVP. And in the conversation for MVP. He's going to have close to 2,000 yards this year if he doesn't hit it. Because I expect that he might even hit it. It's going to be interesting to see how the next few weeks really happens with Saquon, and whether he's going to, be the offensive player or have more of a conversation for the MVP. Because truth of the matter is that right now, I mean, there's a couple people that I think are MVP worthy that aren't being spoken about. Um, I know that Goff had that 5 interception game, and that's really hurt him in the Lamar chase. But everybody forgets they have a receiver and a running back on that team that are doing amazingly well. Amon St. Ra or St. Brown is doing amazing. He's amazing. Him and Montgomery are the reasons why those guys are doing really well.
Well, and you even look at the Lions defense. Hutchinson's been out the year. He might be back come playoff time. There's some talk of that. I don't know Willie or won't he, but there's some talk of that. Can you imagine he could come back and he's close to 100%? I mean, what a boost that gives him.
Yeah. I mean, that's what's going to make Detroit very hard out. Like I said, I told you in the beginning of the year, I thought the Eagles were going to go to the NFC Championship game in Detroit. And I can't tell you how that game's going to go because I think there's too many intangibles that I can't foresee. Everything that I foresee right now has Detroit going to the Super Bowl. But I don't trust their coach in very, very, very big situations. The coach has been coaching with the lead all season long. let's see him with a little bit of adversity and see how that he would go. That was at that game in San Francisco. He had a little bit of adversity and he chose wrong. He would need something like that to occur as well. But let's get going a little bit further on some of these games. Minnesota Vikings beating the Texans 23-13.
The Titans.
Titans, I mean, I thought that was a much closer game than it needed to be. Minnesota is just their quarterback's not
Good rebound game for Sam Darnold yesterday. Sam Darnold's going to be a free agent at the end of the year. I'm not sure where he's going to go exactly, but I would think he'd be starting for someone, not the Vikings who invested in J.J. McCarthy. Maybe the Raiders, and maybe a team that's not in a high enough position to draft a quarterback. Maybe the Titans next year. Maybe they like the way he looked enough to make him their quarterback to sign him because Will Levis hasn't quite worked out.
right. And the Cleveland Browns fall to 2-8 against the Saints of New Orleans. That was like a nothing game. Hill had 3 touchdowns in that game, which was good for him. Obviously, he shows back up. But
what do you do if you're Cleveland with Deshaun Watson next year? You don't bring him back as your starter. I can't see it, but you have to. The money he's getting paid, you want him around. He's getting paid, one of the highest paid guys in the NFL. You draft a quarterback, I would think, and maybe move on from Jameis Winston and maybe allow Deshaun Watson to start until the guy you draft you feel is ready.
I disagree with your thought process, and I'll tell you why. You're paying so much money for a quarterback. Drafting a quarterback right now is futile. I think that you need to bolster your offensive line for your next quarterback. You want to play that string out. You want to get your first round picks, your early first round picks. You want to start to get offensive linemen. And then you want to once you have everything figured out on your offensive and defensive line, because I would spend all my first and second round picks right now. If I'm Cleveland, that's what I'm doing. And then in 2 years, or, because you got the rest of this year, obviously, next year you're going to be stuck with him, and then you can get rid of him. At that point, you could eat the contract. And then you go for the quarterback after you've had an offensive line that's been playing with each other for a season plus. And you start bolstering that and then go after a quarterback. I think right now you're going to get a new quarterback.
Who would start next year for Cleveland?
I don't care who starts. Who cares?
You run it back with Deshaun Watson, and you hope maybe you get lucky, and which I doubt, and he puts it together and regains his old form, which I thought was going to happen this year, and I was woefully wrong.
Yeah, I think you'd have to die by the sword that you have. You know what I mean? So you got to die by that sword. And like I said, you're stuck with him now. You bring him back next year. You start to bolster the offensive and defensive lines. And then, because their defense is pretty good. It's their offense that really stinks. And their offensive line sucks. So I would definitely start. I would invest all my resources on the offensive line, get them playing for a season, get them used to each other, and then go after a quarterback once you know that you can protect them a little bit. Because there's no sense of bringing in a rookie quarterback to get him killed. You got who I'm about to talk about next, the Chicago Bears, who got Caleb Williams killed again. However, if they had a kicker who could kick the ball too, they would have won the game.
Yeah, I mean, the Bears have lost some games. The Washington Commander game on the ridiculous blunder by Tyreek Stevenson that cost them the game. Yeah, had that blunder not happened by one player, and I'm being polite by only calling it a blunder, and then yesterday had they made the kick if it wasn't blocked, I mean, think of the swing, 2 more wins, 2 less losses, and you're looking at them differently. But what a brutal division that is to be in when you're looking at the Lions, Packers, and Vikings. I mean, to keep up with those teams. And there's supposed to be a lot of discontent in the Bear locker room where Caleb Williams is even apologizing to the veterans. They like Justin Fields there. He was well liked. And now there's probably some rumblings. Well, we should have kept Justin. Why do we have this guy? But Caleb Williams has a lot of talent, and he's shown it at times this year. And he might be an elite NFL quarterback when all is said and done. But right now, he's a rookie. He's learning. He's gone through a lot of rookie pains. And I don't think the veterans on the team fully understand that. They don't have full patience on that unless it's a Jaden Daniels type, a rookie that his teammates like a lot. They see he's humble, he's learning. We're going to help him learn. But you get the feeling the bad veterans have had it. Their attitude isn't, we're not going to help Caleb Williams learn because this guy's all over the place. You get that feeling.
Well, it's going to be interesting to see how the rest of this season plays out because I think Eberflus is gone. I think that they're going to be getting rid of their offensive coordinator. Well, they did already get rid of the offensive coordinator.
Yeah.
So, I mean, now they've gotten, are they going to have a third offensive coordinator within the first 2 years of this guy's, this guy's career? I think that that's just a mess over there. And Chicago is where Chicago is because they put themselves there. So, and that's, the fact that they missed the kick yesterday is just a caveat in the mess that's already over there. So,
Yeah.
as we're running out of time here, so let's get through the rest of the games. The Dolphins beat the Raiders. Dolphins, I think the Dolphins are actually a playoff team, and you may see them come back up here in the next. They have the softest schedule moving forward for the rest of the season. Rams over the Patriots. That was a game that was much closer than I expected it to be. The Patriots are playing actually some pretty decent ball for as bad of a team as they are. So I'm sure that Keith
they
Engel
got to get a
about
couple
that.
of weapons, the Patriots, to help out Drake May.
I agree. Broncos spank the Falcons, which I was a big surprise. I thought that would be a lot closer, that the Broncos were having a hard time scoring points, and the Falcons had a pretty good defense. Both showed that was not the case in this last game. The Seahawks upend the 49ers. And I called this on Friday in my show because Bo is obviously a Seahawks fan being from Seattle. And I said that I thought that the 49ers had the possibility of getting beaten here, that they would be they're just not kicking on all cylinders.
No.
And that's going to be an
Something
issue.
is missing. Geno Smith led that final drive, took the Seahawks down the field, and then ran the ball in for the winning touchdown. But there has to be a little caution. If the 49ers get in as a wild card, which they might, they're not the team you want to play. They're not going to be a typical wild card team that just manages to sneak in. I mean, they're capable of regaining their old form. But you said it best. Something is missing now. They're not kicking on all cylinders, but if it does come together, they're a dangerous team.
Right. But they got to make it to the playoffs right now. And as of right now, that's going to be a little bit of a
5-5.
struggle.
That division, I mean, Seattle's 5-5, Niners 5-5, Rams are 5-5, Arizona's 6-4.
Right.
Anyone could win that.
100%. The biggest game at the 4:00 that I didn't watch a snap of was the Chiefs Bills. And that obviously the Bills win that game. The Bills always seem to beat the Chiefs in the regular season. This is a game that we're going to have to wait to see in the playoffs to see how that actually changes up because once they get into the playoffs, both Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson have a really difficult time beating one Patrick Mahomes.
Now, we acknowledge Patrick Mahomes as the top quarterback in the NFL based on what he's accomplished. But if we forget what quarterbacks have done in the past, the current quarterbacks, and only look at them currently at this moment, I can make a very valid argument, and I will, that at this particular moment, I think Josh Allen's the best quarterback in the NFL at this moment. Going forward, I wouldn't count out Patrick Mahomes at all. Don't get me wrong. I know what he's capable of doing, and he could easily regain that status of being the number one quarterback in the NFL, but right at this particular moment, I'd give a little edge to Josh Allen. You know what drives me crazy? And the same thing happened in the Jet game. they have a chance to stop Josh Allen, fourth down, big situation. And I keep saying Josh Allen's going to run with the ball. If it's 4th and 5, 4th and 7, whatever you do, don't let Josh Allen run with the ball because I knew he was going to do it against the Jets. And he locks up the game with a first down against them. And he did it yesterday, ran for touchdown. Make him beat you by throwing the darn ball. I mean, don't let him. I mean, great running quarterback, great passer. I mean, Josh Allen's outstanding. And the Bills made a believe out of me, Pags. I picked the Chiefs yesterday. I think it was a statement game for the Bills to show that they are valid Super Bowl contenders. And they proved it to me. I take them seriously now.
Well, they do it every year, and they seem to get. Because they play Kansas City every year because they're both number one in their division, and it seems that in the regular season, the Buffalo always has the edge, and the playoffs, Kansas City takes.
Let me throw this at you. Of all the matchups in the NFL come playoff time, what is the most compelling matchup you could get of all the games? I think it's another game with the Chiefs and the Bills. There's no more of a compelling matchup. There's no better matchup, I think, that you can get.
I agree. I would say on that side of the ball right now, the Chiefs and Bills are there.
Yeah,
I
fun
think that
matchup.
I think the same thing. Same thing with the Steelers Ravens. I don't think that the Ravens Chiefs
Boring,
do it.
boring. But the
Yeah,
game
I
is
hear that.
boring. Any Steeler game. Bills and Chiefs, you got fireworks, Packs. You got entertainment. You get no entertainment with the Steelers. Come on.
Well, and I on the NFC side, I do have to agree that it would be the Eagles and the Lions. I think that that's going to be the premier matchup that we're waiting to
You
see
know,
for
you know,
NFC
you, you
Championship.
said something that was fun kind of a little while ago that Dan Campbell might botch things up for the Lions with one of his calls. If any coach is to cost his team in the playoffs, you say Dan Campbell, is Nick Sirianni next in line to somehow make a blunder, a
One
crazy
hundred percent is
call.
that a possibility. 100% is a possibility.
By the way, Pags, I think you nailed it. I hate to go to the NBA for a second with Doc Rivers, the Bucks coach, when he went there. You claim to be the demise of the Milwaukee Bucks.
Yep. He's not a good coach. Not a good coach. We'll
Okay,
talk about that tomorrow.
another
But
thing. Yeah.
the last game before we get into a little bit of boxing and MMA, the Bengals come all the way back to just lose to the Chargers 34-27. I thought that the Bengals they had all the momentum in the second half. They were doing their big thing. Next thing you know, they wind up the blowing that one drive by the Chargers,
Yeah.
and there it is. Bengals lose. I think that eliminates them really from playoff contention. I know that they're not 100% out yet, but they'd have to win out now the next 5 games, and I just don't see that happening.
It's a shame because they would be dangerous if they win the playoffs. They wouldn't be an easy out for anyone. And they've lost so many close games this year. Yesterday was another one. Kudos to Jim Harbaugh. He should be, a prime candidate for Coach of the Year for what he's meant for this Charger team.
I agree. And so, with only a few minutes left to go, we have, we'd be remiss if we did not talk about what happened on Friday night on Netflix. Uh, I'll tell you my personal opinion. That girl fight was a great fight, and that
Man
girl
of the
got
round against
robbed.
Katie Taylor.
And I will say that girl got robbed. She got. I mean, the headbutt aside, and the girl losing the point aside, I thought that she won more rounds. What do you say about that?
Pags, you have to score a fight to make the statement. It was a close fight. I hate to use the term rap. They even talked to Jordan Maldonado, Serrano's chief corner person, late in the fight. I think it was the 8th round he was being interviewed. And he says, I think we're 1 point ahead. That certainly sounds close. And Taylor was coming on. I normally score every meaningful fight round by round, so I have a definite opinion and a definite scorecard. But Netflix, I lost a round and a half of the fight because they were having trouble on the screen. The picture went off, and I could only hear sounds. I couldn't score the fight anymore. There were 2 rounds I couldn't score, so I gave up on scoring the fight. My impression was Serrano had the better of it earlier. Taylor came on a little late. I thought with the point being deducted on Taylor for using a head, maybe Serrano would have edged it out by a point. It would be 5 rounds apiece. But all 3 judges had it 6-4 Taylor. And even with the 1 point deduction, she came out a point ahead. The punch counts favored Serrano. So what could I say? But I wasn't able to score round by round. The only thing I take objection to the word robbed. It's used too easily, robbed. It's fair to say I think Serrano should have gotten the decision, and it's okay to say I think the decision was unfair in a fight like this. But to use the term robbed, that's a bit harsh, and people use that a little too loosely.
I can go with that. I can understand that. Are women's fights always 2 minute rounds?
2 minute rounds. Serrano advocated for 3 minutes, but think of this: would the action have been so great if it was 3 minutes instead of 2 minutes?
No, I agree with that, but then it makes me think, and the same thing with the cut. The cut started to affect her a little bit, and the way that they went at it. They explained this on air, whereas like their styles are like that. So this is something that's common because she has an unorthodox fighting style. She leads with her head, and so did her. They butted heads, but they were both leading with their head for those headbutts. So I can't really say that. It was when she was leaning on her head on that cut with her head. That was when the referee took the point away, and I saw that. It made sense to me. It wasn't like, oh yeah, they're doing this together. No, she was leaning on it a little bit, and then of course that the Jake Paul fight. Uh, is Jake Paul helping himself here by doing the things that did that fight help him at all?
$40 million or so? Are you kidding? Come on.
Well,
Jake Paul's a wealthy guy. He has a thing going. I'm astonished that Mike Tyson would take half the money that Jake Paul took because Tyson was more of the attraction. At the very least, the money should have been even. I mean, people were tuning into Netflix and you didn't have to pay extra money. If you were a Netflix subscriber,
right.
you get it for free. That was great. It wasn't so much a boxing match, Pax. It was an entertainment, a spectacle where people would get together to see it. It didn't surprise me at all. 58 years old. Give me a break. I don't think Jake Paul went all out. I think Jake Paul threw some meaningful punches, but wasn't trying to get Tyson out of there. Like we were talking about football before, it was like running the ball instead of passing it late in the game when you have a big lead because you're not looking to score. He wasn't looking to score the stoppage late in the fight.
Well, and I was
So
looking at it. I looked at it the same way. I thought that Tyson was holding back. I thought that he could have.
Tyson,
Yeah, I thought Tyson could have gone after him a little bit better, and he didn't. And that was part of the issue. It was just
well, he
it's
couldn't. He's 58 Pags. Name one athlete in any other sport, an all-time great, who will return at age 58 and be as effective. If Mariano
no,
Rivera came back as Yankee closer, how good would he be at age 58?
No, I get it. Like I said, there's only one person I could possibly think of that would fall into that category. That might be Wilt Chamberlain. Short of that, there's not anybody. That being said, when you saw him practice in comparison to the way he went about the fight, he didn't have any one of those. Like he wanted just one moment where he went at it like he did in practice, and there was none of that, and that was part of the problem. I thought that everybody had with this fight in general. I mean, like I said, I think that they just, after watching that fight, I was like, wow, I spent time watching that. I'm glad I at least watched the women's fight. So the women's fight made it worthwhile. That being said, we're done for the day. You're going to get me and Jack tomorrow as well. Thank you for tuning in today, and we will see you guys tomorrow. Take care.